Okay, this is going to be a part two to the parallel worlds I was talking about. So, part two, I want to talk about location in parallel worlds too. Sometimes the geographical location can determine the kind of parallel world you in. I know it's been said it's about how you feel, and I pretty much talked about that in that last audio too. Yeah, it's about how you feel and the kind of world you've been in, the way you feel and the way you purposely the kind of energy you purposely try to put yourself in and how you might have come up. So I discussed that in the last audio. I want to talk about geographical location. So I lived in Inglewood for 5 years, Inglewood, California for 5 years. Okay. And so I was working on my energy a lot. I was working on aura cleansing. I was working on a lot of love vibrational energy and stuff like that, and a whole bunch of them, raising my vibration. Okay, now here's what I have to say about that. Because of me rising up in frequency, and because me of my what you would want to call ascension, it could be also expansion too, because when I see myself, when I start to see myself kind of rising up in frequency, it looks like I'm, kind of becoming big too. So it's a lot of it is expansion also. But what I have, the thing is, as I rose up in frequency, I was no longer a fit for that location. Even though you would have what you would so called positive people in there, the issue is that you might have positive people here and there. You got to look at the collective consciousness of the area you're located in. So I was in Inglewood, California, and I stayed to be honest with you, I stayed in a middle class area. I stayed in a nice middle class area with no robberies, no violence, nothing like that. And it was a so called black neighborhood, okay, but it was like a middle class type of neighborhood. And it just no robberies, because it was a lot of elderly people that lived there. It wasn't a lot of young people, unless they were little babies or something, or the young people would come back to visit like from wherever they were. But down that street that I stayed on, it was mostly elderly people. So it was not a bad area. Here's the thing. I still outgrew that area, even though it's pretty much a decent. It was a decent neighborhood to stay in, a decent neighborhood to stay in. Um, I outgrew the frequency. Why? Because even though those people were civilized, even though those were nice people, because of where I was going with my consciousness, I'll say. My consciousness did not fit that atmosphere. So the consciousness, even though you might have had very nice people there, the consciousness of that overall area was probably that of religion, was probably see, that's why I say negative and positive just has to deal with where your energy is going and what resonates with your energy. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Um, but the consciousness around there was that of mostly religion, Christianity. Um, what else? And just kind of just, yeah, I would say just a lower consciousness of being stuck, even though they were nice people, being stuck in, they didn't have a multi-dimensional way of seeing things. Okay, that's what I'm gonna say. Not didn't really have a multi-dimensional way of seeing things. Okay, and so for that reason, the where my consciousness was, and this is the way I've always been, since I was born. Okay, um, my I was outgrowing that kind of area because my consciousness was no longer a fit for that area. Okay, my frequency was no longer a fit for that area. My vibration was no longer a fit for that area because a lot of those people, even though they might have been nice people, decent, a lot of them were very much still 3D kind of frequency, 3D kind of consciousness, and no more than 4D, most of them. Okay, and so because I was rising above those dimensions, and my consciousness was becoming so much different than theirs, that I was no longer a fit for that area, even though was nice people that stayed there. Okay, it was decent people that stayed there. So that I was literally kind of forced out of that parallel world. I mean, I saw it in visions before I physically did it. Okay, so the way my transition out of that particular area is when I went to India and I lived there for almost 3 months. And then when I came out of India, then I stayed in the Woodland Hills in Los Angeles, California. Okay, and now I'm not even in Los Angeles, I'm somewhere else. But that's because I had a travel opportunity, but that was really good. See how I'm being forced to different places depending on my energy. Now I went into a place that's higher frequency because there's a lot of stuff going on in Los Angeles where there's death energies over Los Angeles, and this opportunity just came up for me. See, I didn't purposely try to do this. This was an opportunity that just kind of arose, and I was pushed into a different parallel world because of where my energies was going. Okay, and so now I'm somewhere different. You know. So anyway, this would just be part two. So that's what that part two was. Just sometimes your parallel worlds can have to do a lot to do with your geographical locations. And here's another thing: it's not about rich or poor, because when I was in India, a lot of times people had less than like going to Woodland Hills or whatever. But India, I was just supposed to experience that temporarily. Okay. But to be honest with you, even though a lot of those people had less money, they had a higher vibration than when I stayed in Woodland Hills, okay, where people had money. And why is that? Because when you come into the United States and in the Western world in these kind of areas, they they value money to a point where money defines them and their material things define them. Now, it's not to say that it's anything wrong with having a nice house and having a nice car. No, what I'm saying is material things define them instead of them using money just just using money for their need. Is almost like a fashion show. It's like your worth is determined by what you have. And so that's why I say even though they had less in India, they were still kind of on a higher type of frequency. Okay? But it's not to say that you shouldn't, because I know people like to demonize money. No, this isn't to demonize money. Uh, because I also came across a lot of people in India who kind of beg too. Okay, so the money is pretty important no matter where you go. No, what I'm saying is how people define themselves. Use money for their need instead of letting material things define them. And when you come into the U.S., a lot of times people allow material things to define their worth. That's the difference. Nothing wrong with having money. But anyway, so I just want to talk about geographical locations as well when it comes to parallel worlds too. But with that being said, I will talk to you later.